This episode of the Driving Safety Show is sponsored by Drivers Alert, celebrating 30 years of helping companies keep their drivers safe. To learn more, visit driversalert.com. Distracted driving, drunk driving, drowsy driving. You want safer roads, and so do we. You're listening to the Driving Safety Show. Hear insights, in-depth analysis, and expert advice from key players in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors who are leading the way in making our roads safer. Are you ready to join us? And now, your host of the Driving Safety Show, Rich Sordahl.
Welcome to another episode of the Drivers Alert Driving Safety Podcast, where we interview some of the most influential people in driving safety. Our guest today is Michael Welvaert. He is the Regional Safety Director at Comfort Systems USA, a national heating, ventilation, and air conditioning company with $2.5 billion in annual revenue. At Comfort Systems, Michael is responsible for overseeing the safety initiatives for 11 of the company's subsidiaries. He is also in charge of advising those subsidiaries on OSHA compliance, safety leadership, and accountability. Prior to joining Comfort Systems, Michael worked for a commercial electrical company in Houston, Texas. During that time, he served on the safety committees of the Houston chapters of the Associated Builders and Contractors, the American Subcontractors Association, and the Associated General Contractors of Houston, where he was safety chairman. In 2014, after 25 years in the U.S. Navy, Michael retired as a Special Warfare Operator Chief, otherwise known as a Navy SEAL. Michael, thank you for joining us today.
No, thank y'all.
Comfort Systems USA is a very large HVAC company. Could you tell us a little bit more in depth about what you guys do and the industries and markets that you serve?
We primarily in the construction industry, large project construction, and we do have a service side. It's pretty robust as well. As far as what we do in the construction field is we do all the HVAC and plumbing. So, for folks that don't know what HVAC, it's the air conditioning and heating throughout the buildings, plus the plumbing to everything that runs out there. So we do all that, big high rise. We do some companies do residential. We're about 37 companies strong right now, probably approximately 120 locations across the United States.
So you're involved in both commercial and residential?
Commercial, residential service, yeah. Some of the smaller companies, the smaller operating companies do a touch of residential work. So, yeah.
Maybe you could give us a little bit of insight into what some of the potential dangers could be involved when employees are out on the job site. What activities would require employees to really be on their A game?
Well, on the construction side of the house, you have other trades out there, the electricians, the drywallers, all those folks, out there. Job sites tend to be less clean than others, so you have the trip hazards, you have fall hazards, you work with electrical, all that kind of stuff. It's basically similar like a battlefield in the large project construction is the way you look at it. We have dangers all over the place wherever you look. So it's mitigating those. And on the service side, the technicians are pretty much alone most of the time. And more than half the time they're working, they're driving. They're on the roads. So that's a real big hazard because it's not just our folks, it's everybody else on the road as well that we don't know what their driving skills are. So those are our biggest things we deal with.
So Michael, you have a huge responsibility, and I believe you said you travel a lot too. So there's probably not a typical day in your life, but maybe you could kind of help give us some insight into what one day might look like on the job.
So, yeah, I travel 3 weeks out of the month. I have, my 11 locations and all that. So a typical day for me, depending on the full day from start, I definitely go into the operating company and, just tell them there, and then we get it set up for the schedule, what we're going to do the next day. And then the next day seems to be pretty robust. We go over, some of their safety initiatives, some of their, go over some of their meetings they have, but then we go and hit job sites. I believe that's like the most important thing is, when you talk to corporate or headquarters or whatever your company calls it, A lot of the executives don't get out to the field and see the folks doing the work, the superintendents, the helpers, all those employees. So I like to go out there and I check job sites. I'm not an audit person. I don't go out and do an audit of a job site because I feel that I do more benefit when I'm talking to the folks and hearing what issues they may have, and then assisting the safety directors at these locations with little things. I coach them through like leadership and how to interact and stuff like that. So that's pretty much my day. And for example, the other day in Iowa, we hit five job sites at that operating company. So in one day, so we were driving all over Iowa. It was pretty fun.
Wow. And so you're responsible for both fleet safety and general workplace safety?
Yes.
Do you find that there are any nuances between those two areas? Sometimes I know us, Drivers Alert being a fleet safety company, we sometimes kind of see some differences in how the approaches are taken in fleet safety versus workplace safety. Are there any things that you see that you can elaborate on?
Yeah. What I see a lot in the companies that I represent and take care of is if they're not. This kind of goes hand in hand with regular safety in the construction side. If they're not proactive and their culture is not really that good, it will trickle into the driving side of the house as well. So if you have more injuries in construction, you may have same amount of vehicle accidents. They kind of coincide, and all narrows down the culture in my book. If you have a executive branch and all of the leaders and they're all in a safety and they're all for you and they back up their supers and their project managers, the culture is great. But if you have one kink in the chain, you can see the differences. So there's also companies where your safety on the construction and service side is just outstanding, but then their driving's not so well, and you just got our company is very decentralized, and that means every company you walk into has a different culture, different personality, different way of doing some things. So you really got to find out what makes them tick, basically, to put it in layman's terms.
And on your travels, I imagine a lot of the time is also spent in meetings or safety meetings. Does this run the gamut? Are there managerial safety meetings as well as broader employee safety meetings, or can you kind of maybe help me understand better that mix?
Yeah. So most companies will do at least a safety meeting once a month. They bring in the field or key leaders in the field, and then the leadership inside in the main office itself. On the job sites, we definitely try to, more than I can say 90% of the job sites, they do a meeting every morning, and they discuss the tasks at hand. They discuss the hazards they're going to run into. Well, on the service side, it's a lot different because they sometimes have their vehicles at home with them, and then they just leave from home and go. So what we try to do is, encourage the operating companies to bring them in at least once a month or once a quarter to go over major safety issues, or at least call them or email them or get in contact with them somehow to let them know what stuff to look out for is starting to come as trend wise. So that's how we kind of do it. But pretty much at least once a month they'll get together and have all the key personnel in for that.
What would you say is the toughest challenge then in managing a corporate safety program? I know you mentioned you travel a lot. There's decentralization involved at Comfort Systems, and maybe that plays a part in it. But is there anything that stands out?
That's a huge part, really. The decentralization, like I said, it's different when you walk into every company, every operating company. So you have to, we need to, as regional safety directors, there's three others besides me, we have to know that company. Because you can't roll in there and just start, throwing OSHA this, OSHA that, or thou shall have to do this, because they are not very, very susceptible to that. So if you go in there and you talk to them, you find out where they need their help, and you support them in every way. That's how we were able to influence more so than direct is how we try to roll with, the safety from corporate down to the operating companies.
And what is your approach to, I guess, sending out a consistent message when you have such a decentralized culture? I'm sure that has to be a challenge.
Yeah, it is. It's a big challenge. What we try to do for the most part is all the regional safety directors are on the same sheet of music. We all, we're all trying to get to the best thing. We're all trying to make sure everybody goes home every day with, all their 10 fingers and 10 toes and eyes and all that. So for our message, that's what we bring down to the field. And, we do have policies and procedures on a corporate level, and then the operating company may make them more stringent depending on the company, the location, and how their culture is. And we just support them. So that's what we do. But, I know when there's an injury or incident at any company, the regional safety directors, we feel just as bad as the people on, at the operating company, because it's one of ours, so we don't want to see anyone get hurt.
Now, thinking, as I mentioned in the intro, 25 years in the Navy, and being in such a structured environment, and you think about the skills of leadership, managerial skills, the understanding the purpose and necessity of training, organizational skills. How have you taken all of that mix and translated it into corporate safety?
Well, it's pretty unique, from where I came from. We weren't really the safest bunch on the ground. We weren't paid by the military to be the safest bunch. But what it does, it makes you realize, what's right and what's wrong. And you can take that. I like the military personnel being safety folks because we can read manuals. We read all the federal manuals that you got at the military, so it's easy to read OSHA manual. The leadership, bringing the leadership down in the organization was key for me in the safety world, because if you don't have organization and you don't have leadership, anyone can go in there and yell at somebody and tell them to do this. But if you go, it's harder for someone to go in there and influence them. So that was one thing I learned in the military was you can bark orders at anybody all you want. And I was one of those folks where, you bark orders at me, I may do it, may not. But if you talk to me like I'm a person and do it, so that kind of helped out. And that's what I do with my leadership style is I take that to the safety directors and the operating company, leadership, and go over that with them, and and help them communicate with the the different generations we have out there, because everybody thinks the new guy may not have a great idea, but you know what, they might. So it's kind of a big thing for me. I know for personally as a safety director, that helps out a lot.
We hear a lot about buy-in when you're building a safety program, and I guess a question I have for you would be, if you're trying to get somebody to follow a specific program, where do you start? What's the best approach to getting people to really follow that and participate in it actively?
For me, it's really I like the frontline leaders. I like the superintendents, the guys out in the field that are actually running the show out in the field, because you still need your executive buy-in, and they're always going to say they're 100% in the safety. But the ones putting it to the ground, to have the guys think about it every day, to think about it before every task, are the superintendents and the lead foreman, those folks, the ones running the jobs. And you get the buy-in from them. They can push it both ways. They can push it down to the lower ranking helper up to the PMs and the senior management, that they're going to be safe and they're going to do it. So that's what I think is the key area right there. If we can influence them and get them all on board, it's going to be payback tenfold.
What about incentives? I mean, is that part of I hear many companies that have safety programs try to use incentives. Some have mixed results. I know companies definitely try to stay away from punitive action, because that definitely can have the opposite effect if you're, like you said, barking orders and you're always yelling at people.
Each company is different. Most of them do have some sort of incentive, and the incentive's not really giving them any type of monetary incentive, but you could give someone a hat, you could give someone just something, a cooler, a coffee mug or something. And that goes really far. We're finding out lately that just even recognition. So, at the corporate level, we have a company that does a safety share, which is either near misses or just the share of safety, something that they've seen and they fixed. And this past year, we took myself, one of our legal officers, and another safety director, and we basically graded them, and we picked the best one, and we got recognition from our Comfort Systems CEO on just a handwritten letter, basically saying we appreciate this, and that went farther than I ever seen. So just a little bit of recognition like that, I mean, that works, and we're starting to do that with a little bit more driving now too, for the best, safest drivers out there. And it
Yeah,
seems to
we
be
hear a
working.
lot about that. Recognition is definitely a big part of it. What about culture? Both company culture overall, as well as the individual, safety culture. I guess in your case, is decentralized, so there might be many different safety cultures at different locations. But how important is culture in the success of a safety program?
Culture's huge. Culture's really big. You got to have a safe culture all the way around. You got to have a good culture. So one great thing about Comfort Systems is from our CEO of Comfort Systems USA is all about safety. We actually redid our core values for this year, and that's our number one: be safe. And it's now being pushed across a lot more and more. We've been safe. You try to be safe as you can at most companies, and normally production always kind of takes over, and all the safety directors that watch this will understand what I'm saying. And now that you get in the focus from the more or so be safe from the operating company presidents all down, like they all want to be safe, they don't want to hurt anybody, but you always got to make the percentage. Culture is really huge, and you can see the biggest shift now that that big corporate, that's our primary. So you can start seeing it now. But yeah, culture is huge. If you don't have a good safety culture, you're you're going to be walking around on job sites that get people injured, and it's not right. And you see it with other trades and stuff, and you can tell their culture, our guys will be walking around with all PPE on, and then you'll see another trade walking around with nothing, and people are always getting hurt, stuff in their eyes, cut on the arm, something, so they don't have the culture that we had, and you can tell.
What about the company policies, processes, and procedures? I imagine sometimes it's easy for employees to start tuning it out because it can be repetitive. It's said so many times, especially complacency when that starts to creep in with somebody who's been around for quite a while and has done the same thing. How do you continue to emphasize effectively the importance of following processes and procedures?
So another great thing about Comfort Systems is our CEO loves training all the way down to the newest hire. So we have leadership training, we have project management training, we have service manager training, we have all these trainings, and it's really good because what we do is we reinforce it everywhere we go. We do a lesson in leadership training, which there's two parts to it, and the second part we actually deal specifically with the hard conversations, the older employee that doesn't want to follow the orders, and the newest employee that may look at things different. And we actually do a lot of role playing with that. So training is huge for Comfort Systems. We love to get them out there. I'm an instructor for it as well, and it's great. You can see the light bulb click in somebody, no matter if he's been in the trade for 30 years or he's been in the trade for 1 year. You can see it like, oh, well, maybe I may have talked this person wrong. And that's the biggest thing is training what we do. So it helps out a lot.
What about in your experience just overall, including the military? What are some common denominators that you've seen across incidents, accidents, injuries that continue to raise their ugly head? Is it, cutting corners, complacency, things of that nature? What have you seen?
It's pretty much all those. Someone cutting corners, someone rushing. It happens I don't want to say it happens a lot, but it happens more frequent than I like to see. Even in the military side, it's normally when someone's not doing what they're supposed to be doing and they try to take a shortcut, or you get complacent. Hey, I've done this all the time. I've never gotten hurt. That's when Murphy's law comes up and gets you, and I see it a lot in the construction trade, in construction trades is, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've never been shocked before. I've never been cut before. Next thing you know, you threw it out there, now it's going to happen. And it normally does. So, the environment, just like in the military, your battlefield environment's changing all the time. So it is also in a construction field as well. Your job site's always changing. It wasn't there may be there tomorrow. So that's what we tell the employees is to, be aware. Things are changing daily, no matter what. You can't stop it. It's going to change. So don't get complacent.
And I would imagine too, in the industry of construction, the time pressure is an issue as well, since you have deadlines and sometimes there's incentives to complete a project by a certain date. And that has to be a tough balance of between safety and getting something done in a timely fashion, I would imagine.
Yeah, and you do see it a lot is the time crunch, and it comes from the general contractors all the way down. And we have companies out there that they'll try to adjust their time, but they're not going to adjust it to hurt anybody. And that's getting more and more you see across the country. You see, hey, they may want this building done a month earlier than they expected, but they're going to get it done when it gets done, and they're not going to hurt anybody because you know how it all comes back on you if someone gets injured, and we don't want to see a fatality or anything like that. So most companies trades are pushing back on that.
What is an effective approach to fixing a known safety issue? For instance, you see something happening at a particular job site, maybe by a particular employee. How do you approach that employee, and how do you get a productive outcome out of that where behavior change takes place?
So another great thing about comfort is we definitely like the coach and mentoring more so than the discipline. So we have the coach, counsel, and discipline is basically our structure. So we'll go and coach the person. What I personally like to do is, if I catch someone that's blatantly violating, like not wearing PPE, I would I hope my safety director do the same thing, and they would go up and just start talking and be like, "Hey, man, come on, where's your heart at? You know why we have you wear it, right?" And you engage them. You don't go up to them and start yelling at them and say, "I'm gonna write you up," and start pulling paper out. Now, if they're a repeat offender and they keep doing something that's very unsafe and it's blatant, you may have to get to that counseling side. And you can do it either way, verbal, written. I like the verbal first. I'll give them the extra chance, and then after that, they just don't care enough. And then you don't want someone like that on your job site because they could hurt themselves and possibly someone else. So, that's what we do with the coach, counsel, and discipline.
One question I have too is kind of topical. The situation, of course, everyone I'm sure is familiar with the Boeing 737 safety issue. We've had the two recent accidents, and I saw on the news just a couple of weeks ago that the Air Force had been taking delivery of brand new KC-46 air refueling tankers, and the Air Force had actually put a stop to receiving them because they were noticing there was trash inside the airplanes. They found tools that Boeing had left in there. And just thinking, these were brand new planes, although not a safety issue. Kind of segueing into the topic of general housekeeping, I've heard safety professionals say that they can make a pretty accurate assessment of a site or a company based on the cleanliness, the organization of a particular area. Can you kind of concur in those thoughts?
Yes, I do. Absolutely. You walk on a job site and, they're not going to be perfectly clean by no means. But if it's a straight squared away job site where, their lay down yards looks good, and it's clean areas where everybody's working and everybody has to pick up at the end of the day, like there's certain rules in housekeeping that normally those jobs run very smooth on the production side of the house. And then on the safety side of the house, they're safer jobs. You have less to worry about. You know, a clean job site, that maybe their plan, how they have everything set up. There's stages of the trades coming in. No one's on top of each other. Everybody's doing their job, and it's a lot cleaner. And it's good on the morale out there too, because do you really want to be rolling around on a job site that's you're dodging nails and people swinging stuff around, just total chaos? Or would you rather go to a job site that you walk in and here's where you're working, what level you're on, and what you're going to do, and what your tasks are, and just knock it out? So yeah, you see it. You see it because there's job sites that you walk in and it's total. It looks like total mayhem, and you're climbing over things just to get to your spot where you have to work.
What would you say is the overall health of the safety profession today? You find it difficult to find qualified candidates?
Yeah, a few years ago, I'd say 4 or 5 years ago, everybody knew a safety person, and anyone that thought that they knew safety, they took like an OSHA 10 or an OSHA 30, they would try to apply. And right now, you see the safety directors and the safety folks, they're looking for more qualified people, not quantity anymore. But it's still in high demand. And good people, the companies are paying to keep them. They're taking care of their great employees. They're taking care of the great safety folks they have, and it's a lot harder to get. So, I mean, I like to tell people, just make sure you know how to talk to people. Just don't, you can have every qualification. If anyone looks at mine, I don't have all the, alphabet soup after my name, but I do know what's right and wrong. I do know where to find all my information. I do know all that. And I got great relationships with, some OSHA folks here in Houston and stuff, and I can get the answers, but it's more so dealing with the people. And if you can't find someone that, is a safety director that's qualified, that he may have every letter in the world and after his name, but if you can't talk to people and communicate, they're not gonna work out too well.
How does one begin a career in safety? Are there a set of skills that you would have to acquire over time to be successful at it?
Yeah, I was force fed with a fire hose, to just put it blank. When I got out of the military, like I said, I didn't know a whole bunch about safety. I mean, I knew what OSHA was. I had to deal, with ranges and EPA and stuff like that. So I had a baseline of it. But when I got out in the civilian world, there was a lot more qualifications. You have to know certain aspects, especially in the construction field with the falls and the trenching and all this kind of stuff. So it was kind of a steep hill for me to go up, but I did it. And then I basically married a consultant company for a while before I finally was out running on my own. And you definitely need to know the OSHA, and you need to know, who to call. Like, you may not. I mean, there's only certain folks that can remember the whole OSHA manual, and I'm not one of them. But I know where to find it, and I know who to call, and I know what to do. That's what you need to know.
Well, Michael, we're coming up on our allotted time. I guess one of the questions I did want to ask you too before we go is, what about, thinking about other safety professionals that might be watching this? Are there any best practices or approaches or initiatives that you've worked on that might help somebody else who's in a similar position as you? Because I know people are always out there looking for ideas on what works and what doesn't, and trying to make their job easier. Is there anything that you can share?
My biggest thing over the years with military and in the civilian world, especially in the safety, is listening to your people. You have to listen. You have to be able to communicate. You can make up every policy you want and think it's the greatest policy in the world, but the folks in the field are going to tell you what they need, what support, how it's looking, and that way you can tailor your policy or your procedure, how you're going after things a different way. And that goes with the executive part of your company too. You got to listen to them. You can't just go out there and be a safety cop and tell them, this is the way it is, or my way or the highway, because people are going to shut off. You actually listen to them, and it's legitimate concerns. Take care of those concerns too. Don't just listen and walk away and be like, you have to take care. You have to do something about it, and show them that you're doing something about it, because you'll have a team of folks in the field that are just going to follow you all day long if you just listen to them, pay attention, and take care of them.
Michael, how could people learn more about Comfort Systems? The website, the best place?
Website's the best place. It definitely is the best place. If you follow on LinkedIn as well, they like to post some things up on LinkedIn and social media. But yeah, go into the website, because you can actually click on the location and it will take you to that location and show you that about them too.
Okay. Well, I guess one last thing before we go, any final safety message or just thought on leadership in general that might be a good way to end the interview on?
Just with leadership as well, listen to your people, listen to your employees. It doesn't matter if they're new or old, that they're going to tell you a story. And if you listen and pay attention and take care of them, they're going to take care of you.
Michael, thanks so much. I do appreciate your time today. The insights and your wisdom and knowledge are greatly appreciated, and I'm sure it'll be very beneficial for those who are in the safety industry. So thank you.
No, thank you.
Once again, that was Michael Welvaert. He's the Regional Safety Director at Comfort Systems USA.
You've been listening to the Driving Safety Show. To stay up to date on the latest episodes, visit driversalert.com/driving-safety-podcast. There you can sign up for episode notifications, listen to past episodes, and even request to be a guest on the show. And don't forget, the Driving Safety Show is the show that features the movers and shakers who are working hard to make our roads safer. See you next time.